You heard it first right here on the Fanatics View.
Fanatics View, we are here with Drew Pearson. Drew, to start, you have an interesting story that I feel hasn't been fully told to the younger audience. I was wondering if you could just run us through kind of your football start, being undrafted, kind of playing in that era. What was that like?
Yeah, I started playing football at 7 years old, right through Pop Warner, then high school, and then college. And my dream was always to play in the NFL. And not getting drafted, I was a little disappointed that didn't happen. That's back when they had 17 rounds of the NFL draft, 450-some players drafted that year in '73, and no one thought Drew Pearson was good enough to waste a draft pick on. But even though I was disappointed with that, the Cowboys called me, the Green Bay Packers called me, and the Pittsburgh Steelers called me. And, of course, I ended up signing with the Dallas Cowboys. And doing that, even though I didn't get drafted, it made me feel so much better because they were interested in me, and because they were so close to Tulsa University, where I was in school at the time, I was interested in them because I watched them every Sunday on TV, knew all their guys, knew all the coaches, and knew what they represented under Tom Landry. So that's where I wanted to play, and that's where I ended up signing a free agent contract with the Dallas Cowboys over the Green Bay Packers and Pittsburgh Steelers.
Was that choice close? And also, did just being undrafted, did that help create a chip for you that helped you? Just taking you back that
No, it wasn't even close. Pittsburgh offered more money. Green Bay was too cold for this brother to be going up there to try to catch passes. So it wasn't close. The proximity to Tulsa, where Dallas was in Texas, was the way to go. I can go down there on weekends and work out and do those kind of things, a 3-hour drive back. And so I was doing all those kind of things, trying to do what I had to do to make the team. And yes, not getting drafted put a chip on my shoulder. It didn't put a chip. It put a cinder block on my shoulder. You know, I wanted to prove everybody wrong, prove all these people that didn't draft me, and show all the people that did get drafted that, you know, I should have been in that class as well. So I was able to make the Cowboy team, and as I made it, the chip never went away. It never went away. Well, the cinder block never went away. And it was heavy carrying that damn thing around. But it never went away for 11 seasons. And I carried that chip on my shoulder, that cinder block on my shoulder throughout my NFL career, just to prove to everybody on not just a one-time shot, but 11-year shot that I belong with the Dallas Cowboys.
Drew, you know, you are part of one of the most iconic sports moments, football, any sport, with the Hail Mary pass, coined the Hail Mary pass from that catch. Did you know at that moment how iconic it would be, and you know, it'd go on to be named after something? And can you what do you remember most about that play as well?
Well, you know, you make a play like that, you don't know how things are going to turn out as far as how it's going to be accepted or whatever. But it turned out to be the greatest play in Dallas Cowboy football history then and still is today. One of the biggest plays in NFL history. And, you know, it's nice to be able to have an association with a play of that nature to win a football game in a playoff situation. And then after the game, have your quarterback coin it a Hail Mary type play. He said, I threw the ball as far as I could. I closed my eyes and I said a Hail Mary. And that's how Hail Mary became very popular, because next day in the Dallas Times-Herald, it read, the headlines read, Cowboys win by a Hail Mary. And Hail Mary has taken off, and now everybody uses that phrase in sports, especially in football, and in all aspects of life. We all end up in Hail Mary situations, and we overcome those situations. And the reason we overcame those situations is because we caught a Hail Mary. You caught Hail Marys in your personal life, your business life, your charitable life, and even in your sports life. So now we know what to call it. And I'm just proud to be a part of that and be recognized for that.
And, you know, health is a major topic right now in the NFL. We've seen Andrew Luck retire. We're seeing younger players retire at a younger age. What are your thoughts on just that occurring in the NFL right now?
Well, I think that trend is going to continue. as far as players getting out of the game young. They look at their bank account. They look what's ahead of them as far as the situations where players have had issues with concussions and lingering injuries and just not having a comfortable life after football. You look at all that and you say, hey, maybe it's time for me to give it up. And if you got that money in the bank, it's easier to walk away from. We didn't have that kind of money in the bank, so we continued to play as long as we could until they tell us we couldn't play anymore. But because of that, a lot of my guys from my class are suffering physically and not having a good quality of life because of their extended time in the NFL. And so I'm not mad at the guys when they realize it's their time. It's time to give it up. And if I could look at my bank account and had $30 million in that bank account, you probably would have known Drew Pearson for 11 seasons with the Dallas Cowboys. But we had to play, and I'm glad I did play. I do have some issues with concussions and head injuries and stuff like that, but I'm working on it and trying to correct it. But let me tell you something. My life as a former Dallas Cowboy has been tremendous because I came through at the right time when America's team was born, and the success of Tom Landry, part of his 20 consecutive winning seasons, never having a losing seasons, playing in 7 NFC championship games, end up playing in 3 Super Bowls and winning 1. So that to me is what it's all about. And you asked me if it was worth it, if I do it again, knowing the repercussions you might have coming out of that, hell yes, I'd do it again in a New York minute. There's no question about that.
And your health is strong, right? Because I know guys like Tony Dorsett have come out and from around your era, but your health is.
Yeah, I'm in good shape. I only missed 3 games in my 11-year career. I had 1 scope surgery. Never had a major surgery in my life during my playing career or after my playing career. But I do have some issues that I'm experiencing now as I get older, as far as memory and wanting to know the symptoms of dementias, Alzheimer's and stuff like that, to try to come up with ways to slow it down, combat it, if you are diagnosed with that. So those are the kind of things we got to look for in our lives after football because, we didn't know what a concussion was back then. Nothing was labeled as a concussion. A concussion was you got your bell rung. They do a little test, how many fingers I got up. They have 3 up, you say 2, and they say that's close enough. Get back in there, So that's the kind of test we had. We didn't go to a tent or anything. After you come off the field knocked out, not knowing where you are, and you go back out there and play, the next day you go to the training room, they don't even ask you how they feel. They don't even give you an aspirin or anything like that because they didn't expect you to have a concussion because they didn't know what a concussion was back then like they know what it is now. So because of that, a lot of the guys from my era, even before that, are suffering. And hopefully that this new collective bargaining agreement that we're getting ready to negotiate for the 2021 season, hopefully that it'll include some medical benefits or even more medical benefits for the guys that played during my era before my time as well.
Drew, I wanted to talk about one of your other iconic moments that happened more recently, the NFL draft, and you announcing the Cowboys pick in Philadelphia, a legendary, hilarious, viral moment. What was that experience like for you? And as well, when did you know you were going to do that? Was that spur of the moment to some degree?
Well, the Cowboys called me and asked me, was I available? I said, for what? They said the draft. I said, yeah, well, I'll cancel that meeting with Donald Trump for that. But anyway, I was so honored that they asked me because there's so many great Cowboy players that they could have asked. Hall of Famers, Ring of Honor guys that deserve to be in the Hall of Fame, guys that deserve to be in the Ring of Honor. And there's so many great Cowboys, so I was honored. And I felt it would be a privilege to go up there and represent the Dallas Cowboys at the draft. And on the flight up there, I kind of wrote out what I was going to say because I wanted to do the Dallas Cowboys right for selecting me to make this pick. And so I wrote out what I was going to say, but I had no idea I would deliver it the way I did deliver it. And the reason I did deliver it because once the commissioner announced up next with the 60th pick in the second round, the Dallas Cowboys, and the boos started coming. So the commissioner comes backstage. He says, "Are you ready for this?" I said, "Commissioner, I'm used to getting booed in Philadelphia." I said, "As a matter of fact, if it wasn't for the Philadelphia Eagles, I wouldn't have had a career in the NFL." And he started laughing, and then he said, say that. I said, "Really? Say that?" So anyway, it was time to go out there, and as soon as I walked around from backstage and headed toward that podium to deliver the second round pick for the Cowboys, the boos started coming. As I got closer to the podium, the boos started to escalate, get louder and louder, but the Philadelphia Eagle fans didn't know. The more they booed, the more I got fired up. They should have known from playing against these guys for 11 seasons. My record was 16-5, I believe, against the Eagles. They should have known, don't mess with Drew Pearson, but they did. And I got up there, and I wanted to announce, first of all, that I was an undrafted free agent, let people know that. Second of all, I wanted to let them know I'm honored to make that selection on behalf of the Dallas Cowboys. And then in my presentation, I had to include the new Hall of Famer, Jerry Jones. If you include Jerry Jones, you got to include the Jones family. If you include the Cowboys, you got to include the current head coach, which I did in Jason Garrett. Then all the players played before me, with me, and after me. So I didn't want to deliver it that way, but it came out because of the emotion that I was feeling at that time. I was pretty fired up. If somebody in that audience would have threw a cheesesteak at me, I would have caught that sucker, smelled it, took a bite, and then slammed it on it right there on stage with cheese, onions, peppers, everything going everywhere. So they're lucky they didn't do that. So anyway, after it happened, it created a new life for Drew Pearson. Now a whole different age group knows who Drew Pearson is, who Drew Pearson was. Even when I got home, my youngest grandson, who was 6 years old at the time, he says, "Grandpa." I said, "What?" He says, "I didn't know you were Drew Pearson." He said, "I thought you were Grandpa." So that was pretty cool. And they said, "I didn't know you were Drew Pearson." That's pretty cool. So now they know, everybody knows, the grandkids know as well. And it was a marquee moment for me. And again, I appreciate the Dallas Cowboys for selecting me to make that presentation.
Absolutely amazing. I did want to get your thoughts as well on these new Cowboys. I guess shifting to the defensive side first before we ask you about the wide receivers. How do you feel about Leighton and Jalen and Lee? Like this, do you feel like this could be the best linebacking core the Cowboys have had, and also just the defense as a whole? Is this one of the better defenses you've seen in a long time?
Yeah, this is a great Cowboy defense. They got to prove it, though. They had a lot of success last year, top 10 defense, and a lot of aspects of top 5 defense. So hopefully they can continue on that path and build on what they succeeded and the success they had last season. They added a couple new pieces that I think will make them better, including Robert Quinn, who's now back off the suspension list, and he along with DeMarcus Lawrence at the defensive end spots. We get Tyrone Crawford healthy, Antoine Woods healthy again, pushing up from the middle. That kind of defense, those guys there, when you talk about those 4 guys, it reminds me of Doomsday 2 defense, with Too Tall Jones and Harvey Martin on the ends, Randy White in the middle. We had Bill Gregory, Larry Cole, and whomever in that other defensive tackle spot. And that is the reason we had such success, because of that defensive line. Everything starts with the defensive line, because if they could keep the opponent's offensive line off our linebackers with Vander Esch, Sean Lee, and Jalen Smith, those guys will get to the ball, and they'll make plays once they get to the ball. And so hopefully they'll continue to do that. And then once we do that, now when they throw the ball, because of that pressure we're putting on the quarterback, now we'll have a chance to have more turnovers in the defensive secondary. So I think the defense is right on. They got a great coach in Rob Marinelli. You notice one thing about the Cowboy defense, they might have some shortcomings here or there, but they always play hard. They get after it. They play the game the right way, and a lot of reason for that is their coach, Rod Marinelli, won't let them play it any other way.
Absolutely. And what are your thoughts on the Cowboys receiving core? Obviously, Amari has played so much better than what he was playing on the Raiders since he got here. Also, Randall Cobb is looking fantastic. It seems like they found an injury diamond in the rough with Smith as well now. What are your thoughts on the receiving core? Even the tight ends, there's a lot of depth on this team. Your thoughts?
Well, actually, I think it's the best receiving core they've had since I played. Me and Tony Hill, went over 1,000 yards. I went over 1,000 yards in '74, but in '78, Tony Hill and I went over 1,000 receiving yards. Tony Dorsett rushed for over 1,000 yards that year. As the first three guys in NFL history that accumulated 1,000 yards on an offensive football team in the same season. So it set a record there. But you look at their whole receiving core, now it wasn't just Tony Hill and I. We had the great Butch Johnson in the slot, running great pass routes, doing great things there. Then our tight end was Billy Joe Dupree, one of the best tight ends in Dallas Cowboy football history. And when we needed him to block, he was one of the best blocking tight ends in NFL history. And as a receiver going downfield, when we needed it, we could split the thing, work it so that the middle was clear. We send Billy Joe down that middle, and he would make the catches and make the plays. And then you add the receivers coming out of the backfield like Dorsett, Robert Newhouse, Scott Laidlaw, Doug Dennison, Preston Pearson. Oh, my God, Preston Pearson coming out of the backfield. It's like another receiver in your offense because he ran such precise routes, and he always, like a Pearson, always caught the football. So I compare this receiving core to that receiving core. I think Amari Cooper certainly has made a difference. He stretches the defense. He runs beautiful pass routes. He's a veteran player. These young guys can watch him, look at him, and see what it takes to be a professional. Just because you're in professional football, that doesn't mean you know how to be a professional. You see a lot of guys blow their opportunities in pro football because they don't know how to handle it as a professional. So Amari Cooper will teach them how to be professionals. And then the other guys, hopefully they're smart enough to pick up on that. The addition of Randall Cobb is a plus. Cole Beasley was a great receiver for us, did a lot of good things, but Randall Cobb, in my opinion, is a better receiver. So it's an upgrade there. So the offensive line, giving Dak, now in his fourth season, time to throw the football. He's more acclimated to the offense. And then with Kellen Moore, the new coordinator, coming up with all these new formations, new plays, and things of that nature, the players are enjoying themselves. They enjoy playing in this offense. And when their number is called, they feel their responsibility. They got to make the play in order to get their number called again. So that's what it's all about. The offense, they can average 30 points a game. There's no question about that. And they might need to do that in today's NFL where this is no slight on the defense, but there's so many good offenses in the National Football League, and everybody's slinging the football now. So if you can average 30 points a game, then there's a good chance you're going to win most of your football games.
And to piggyback off that a little bit, Dak has so many weapons at his disposal. A new offensive coordinator, everything seems to be clicking right now. Is this the best Dak Prescott we've seen as well? And is that because of the weapons, or do you see development in him as well?
No, I see development in Dak. Everybody wants to get rid of Dak. Well, let him go. Let him go to New York or somewhere and let him fester as a starting quarterback in the National Football League after we groomed him for 3 or 4 years. No, he's what we want as the future quarterback, the current quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys, and the future quarterback of the Dallas Cowboys, because he does it right. And he has improved this year from last year. And a big reason of his improvement, he's got a Kellen Moore, a quarterback, coaching him up. And then the quarterback coach, John Kitna. I think that is the greatest addition to the coaching staff as far as Dak is concerned, because Kitna played the position, had success at the position in the NFL. And he can help with the footwork, the throwing motion, the decision-making, and things like that. And if you have the talent Dak brings and the attitude and the leadership that he brings, you add all those other things to the mix, then we got a quarterback for life that's going to be challenging the great Roger Staubach, the great Troy Aikman, And that's it, okay, as far as the hierarchy of quarterbacks in the National Football League. And the reason I cut it off there is because I think Dak has the potential to take not only the current Dallas Cowboy team, but future Dallas Cowboy teams to the Super Bowl and win a Super Bowl. So then he does that. Now he's in the same class as Roger Staubach and Troy Aikman.
I love that. I love that. And speaking of the Super Bowl and just kind of the NFC East picture, it does seem like the Cowboys should definitely be favorites in the NFC East right now. The Eagles are showing some vulnerability with their last couple of losses. The NFC as well as a whole, I think you can make a strong case. I think Vegas is making that case as well, that the Cowboys are the NFC favorites. Do you agree with that? And do you foresee a potential Cowboys-Patriots Super Bowl matchup coming up here?
Well, I'm not going to go that far ahead and predict that, because those kind of predictions jinx your football team. There's so much going on through the course of the season. Look where the Eagles are going through right now. A lot of people pick them to be representing the NFC. But, man, they're coming up with all these injuries. The whole receiving core is hurt, and they lost a starting tackle in their last game in Lane Johnson. So they've been having their share of injuries, and so you never know how the season is going to play out. That's why back in the day, Coach Landry always had the philosophy, take one game at a time. Your most important game is the next game. Not so much what you did in the past, what you're going to do in this game. Not so much what you're going to do in the future, what you're going to do in this particular game coming up. Once we get past that game, then we'll look on to the next game. So that's how you got to look at it in the NFL, one game at a time. But you set goals while doing that. You know, when we played, our goal was, our immediate goal, our reasonable goal was to win the East and get in the playoffs. Our outstanding goal every year that I played for the Cowboys in my 11 seasons was to go to the Super Bowl and win the Super Bowl. And the only reason we had those two levels of goals that Coach Landry was preaching is because we had the talent to do that. You know, if you don't have the talent, don't give yourself a goal to try to win a Super Bowl. Give yourself the goal to just try to win some games, and hopefully that might be good enough to get into the playoffs, and then you can take it from there. But these Cowboys are good enough not only to win during the regular season, but have success in the playoffs. They got playoff experience. They won a playoff game last year. They lost a tough game to the Los Angeles Rams, who eventually should have been in the Super Bowl last year, but got screwed, you know, in New Orleans. And, well, they did. They didn't get screwed.
New Orleans got screwed.
New Orleans got screwed. But the Rams made the NFC Championship game and ended up going to the Super Bowl. So anyway, we owe them. If they make it, then good for them. But I got a feeling it's going to be Cowboys' time this season.
And last one for you, we'll wrap up on this. I would be remiss if I didn't ask you this. I'm sure the fans want to know, is there any progress on your Hall of Fame candidacy? And is that something that you think of? Just what are your thoughts on that situation as a whole right now?
Well, first of all, you know, it's been so long since I retired. You know, I don't think about it. If I worried about that every day, I couldn't do what I needed to do to have a successful life after football. You know, I'm just happy and proud and feel privileged that, you know, I'm a former Dallas Cowboy. I've made a good life in my life after football because I'm a former Dallas Cowboy. I can't imagine that moniker or that label adding to that of the Hall of Fame making my life any much better than it has been as a former Dallas Cowboy. I've gotten all kinds of opportunities from being a former Dallas Cowboy. But now we're at the point where, like, I'm 68 years old. I don't have much longer to live. I hope I've got a longer time to live than, you know, you think or you hope, you pray for and all that. But, you know, that legacy window for you to enjoy that recognition is shrinking. But you still want it because now you pass that legacy on to your kids and your grandkids, their grandkids, and that lasts forever. So no matter how long it takes, no matter how you get in, you just want to get in and make it happen. I understand the next class that they induct, they're going to expand the class to take care of some of the all-decade players that slip through the cracks, as they say, and get them into the NFL Hall of Fame. I'm all-decade for the 1970s wide receiver. The other receiver on the first team all-decade is Lynn Swann. He's been in the Hall of Fame. Why isn't Drew Pearson in? There's 16 all-decade wide receivers over time in NFL history. 15 of those wide receivers are in the Hall of Fame. The only one not in is me. And you say, why? I don't know. They got to answer that question. That's on them. Then you go to the defensive side. And Cliff Harris is the only one on the defensive side, first-team defense, not in the Hall of Fame. Why isn't he in the Hall of Fame? Is it a Cowboy bias? Maybe so. But get past that. Hey, don't hold up my career, my recognition for some bias, some crap like that. That's not fair. That's not how it should be. So anyway, with the expansion of the class, there's a good chance, might be the only chance, that Drew Pearson gets into the NFL Hall of Fame. And let me tell you something. You thought that speech in Philadelphia was something? You let me up there on that podium with that Hall of Fame induction. You got to give them a speech ahead of time because they critique it. You can't say this, don't say that. I'm going to give them one speech, and when I get to the podium, I'm going to have another one ready to go. And that's the one I'm going to deliver, and I'm going to let it out. Because why? You got nothing to lose at that point, right? Hut!
Drew Pearson,
Right
thank
on.
you very much. Amazing stuff.
You heard it first right here, man. Hut!